Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. My name is Ken Shreve, today joined by our news editor, Ed Carson. On today's show, well, we're going to talk about a pretty ugly day for the stock market, sharp losses for the Nasdaq Composite and S&P 500. But before we do that, Ed, as always, has some stocks to watch for us.
Yeah, it was a pretty ugly day across the board. I want to take a look at Tenet Healthcare, Fiserv, and Microsoft.
Okay, well, why don't we start by taking a look at the Nasdaq composite here and see that the Nasdaq ended with a loss of 3.6%, bad break of the 50-day moving average. Ed, we've been kind of waiting for a pullback here. Seeing the Nasdaq quite extended from its 50-day moving average. We had another bullish reading on market sentiment today from investors intelligence. Bulls over 64%. We finally got that pullback today. And what were the catalysts?
I don't think it's too much of a surprise. I'm not going to really, it's not a big secret, so I'm not going to hide it. It was Tesla and Google were the big contributors. Tesla was the bigger loser, but I'd say Google was the bigger factor because not only is Google to have a bigger market cap, but also I think Google's comments about this and that influenced Microsoft and Amazon and Nvidia, Meta, and a lot of other techs in a way that Tesla did not. I mean, it wasn't fun. So really big losses here. You was sort of hopeful, maybe we're moving back, maybe we're firming up, but pretty decisive here. Maybe we bounce back. There's a lot of earnings. We could see things happen, but this could also mean more serious pullback, even if it's just for a few weeks like we had in April.
Yeah, looking at the Magnificent Seven stocks here, it looks like the best performer today was Apple. That was down 3%. Worst performer, Tesla, you mentioned, down about 12% at the close. Also had a bad break for Nvidia today. Waiting for Nvidia to, is it going to hold support at its 50-day moving average? So, what does this mean now for individual investors? Now that we have the Nasdaq below its 50-day line, the Nvidia below its 50-day line, the pullback seems to have a different tone this time.
Yeah, now there's not that support level, that backstop. If you've been holding on, hoping, it's like, now you have to be thinking, if you didn't already be scaling out of tech, and you should have been, it probably needed even more. And as we'll look at the other indexes, there's starting to be some weakness there too, which, they're not as much less damage elsewhere, but there were still losses. And so there's the concern that this isn't just going to be a tech pullback, or maybe not just even a tech correction, but maybe a more serious market pullback. So that's not necessarily going to happen, but it's something that investors should be prepared for.
Why don't we take a look at the S&P 500? Still have that Nvidia chart up there, but the S&P 500 not down as much as the Nasdaq, but S&P still down 2.3%, and you have a test of the 50-day moving average here, so not a break like the Nasdaq Composite. And here is the SPY ETF.
Just doing that to be more up-to-date to make sure we had the closing price on that. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So not a break of support for the S&P 500, but making a key test here. Let's take a look at we could look at the Dow or the Russell 2000 selling.
Dow coming back into the top of this consolidation, really pretty sharp drop here. Again, it was in a better shape because it had been hitting new highs, but at some point you start losing 1%, 1%, 1%. It doesn't take too long to start looking, hey, that's not looking so good. So that's starting to look weaker. Obviously, Apple and Microsoft falling a fair amount didn't help, but it wasn't just those.
Yeah, and let's small caps. IWM was holding up for a portion of the session, and then they say a weak market eventually is going to bring everything down with it. Small caps looks like they ended with a loss of 2.1% or so, but actually holding support at the 10-day moving average. Russell 2000 had been a nice leading index there for a little while. Still fighting a good fight here.
Yeah, and this is the concern, is that now it's like if you have another loss like this, then it's like, okay, now you're starting to get really worried. Not saying we will, this, again, the market could bounce back in small caps, but it's just something to note. Divided markets are difficult. It's just hard to, a house divided cannot stand. I mean, you can have a divided market, but it just gets trickier to do that. It's just something else is pulling. Maybe it can pull everything up. but there's the risk that everything gets pulled down. So big loss today, just not as much chart damage.
Yeah, a lot of volume on the Nasdaq composite. This is an example of an unequivocal distribution day. Much higher volume on the Nasdaq than the prior session, and again that loss of 3%. So that's going to bring us to 3 distribution days now on the Nasdaq, and now we have 6 on the S&P 500. And some of those percentage declines have been pretty sharp in recent days. So starting to see maybe a little bit of clustering here. All right. Well, why don't we start by talking about some individual stocks? We did get a breakout early in the session from Tenet Healthcare. THC is the symbol there. Good percentage gain. Kind of gave a little back by the close, but still up nicely.
Yeah, and you can see how this relative strength line, 6% day up when the S&P is down 2%, you'll get that RS line to move up pretty quickly. Arguably, if it weren't for earnings, it would have been actionable yesterday when its group peer, HCA, had strong earnings, and HCA moved back above a buy point. And Universal Health is going to be reporting after the close today. There seems to be higher utilization. I mean, and it's not so much on the revenue, but it's like if you have these discretionary, procedures, that's higher margin for these hospitals, and that seems to be working on there. So it is a concern if the market's going there. Sometimes you can have that earnings breakout, and then if the market's troubling, then the next day or the day after, it starts sliding because the general market is weak. But medicals can often be a place to hide in a tougher market because they're somewhat, immune, resistant to economic woes. And, this is showing strong earnings growth, not so much on the revenue side, but really strong on the earnings.
Yeah, definitely as money rotates out of tech, definitely seeing some outperformance in the medical stocks, some healthcare names, even biotech stocks acting pretty well here, as well as many stocks in the building sector that we've been talking about. All right, next on the list, staying in the healthcare space, let's take a look at Pfizer. PFE is the ticker.
No, it's Fiserv.
Oh, Fiserv. FI. My mistake.
I don't know what I said before. I could have slipped that up earlier on, but Fiserv, which is a payments giant.
Yes, and a nice. This is a stock that actually, broke out with some volume today and actually held gains and closed near highs.
Yeah, so this is one, and we'll see if that can hold, just like with all these names in this market. Really been a strong move here. I mean, maybe there would have been you could have argued there was an early entry, but that would have been hard to do ahead of earnings. That's just a tricky. As it turned out, there was a decent, at least a modest cushion, but it would have been tough. But nice action here. You can see that the earnings growth is solid. This has been a long-term leader in the past. I think, as I recall, it may have fallen off because there was this weakness in this stretch, but it had a long track record, and maybe it can resume that track record. It's not doing something tremendous, but there is some history to this stock. Just some steady, the earnings stability rating is a 2. That's one reason why it's on that. That's amazingly steady. So that's just something to, yeah.
Yeah, and that's on a scale of 1 to 99, with 1 being the best. So you see an earnings stability rank of 2. You're looking at a stock with a lot of long-term leader characteristics, and certainly you look at recent quarterly growth at Fiserv, and you can see not too many hiccups, just steady, consistent growth.
Yeah,
so financials continue to be a pocket of strength in the market as well. All right, well, let's, I know I won't get this one wrong, Microsoft, MSFT. We had our Tesla and Google out of the Magnificent Seven reporting earnings earlier today. We've got 4 more reporting next week, including Microsoft. And, even Microsoft had been trying to make a stand at its 50-day moving average, but saw a lot of action like this today. A lot of big tech leaders breaking that key support level with some volume.
Yeah, and there had been some volume on the downside heading into it where the updates were all weak. So while the price picture didn't look too bad heading into this day, it hadn't looked too great. I mean, look, Microsoft is one of the biggest companies in the world, and yet it's still being massively influenced by Google. There's some concerns about margins going forward, maybe about spending. whatever reason, there was a trigger. And so this is why you have to pay attention. Even if your stocks don't have earnings, you need to be paying attention to the earnings coming up. So this one came down through the 50-day line, as you say, like a lot of others. On top of that, Microsoft is also undercut, some recent buy point. Not that people were paying too much attention to that, but it's still noteworthy. Anybody who was buying, in this area is now down, and so that can be some more pressure. Again, maybe this bounces back. There's huge earnings. Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, and Apple all report next week. So it could turn around, but this could also get very ugly. I mean, we really are not in a good situation. We have now sort of broken through all the things that you want to hold. So if things get worse, it could get pretty bad.
Expectations were really, really high for a lot of these companies, including Alphabet. I mean, the numbers were not bad at all at Alphabet. Some concerns about margin pressure, but their ad sales, I know, were better than expected. Their cloud revenue, top 10 billion and 1 billion in operating profit for the first time. So definitely some good news in Google's report. But a lot of these names like Microsoft, Apple, Meta that you mentioned, expectations are pretty high. So these companies really need to knock the cover off the ball. So we'll see what happens. We do have some pretty major chip player reporting earnings after the close. Do you want to take a look at KLA in the chip equipment group?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the numbers. I've been a little busy here, but a lot of things are moving after the close. This one is up modestly. It was up more. This one broke pretty decisively through the 50-day line. Another name, ServiceNow. We did get SAP a couple days ago, but ServiceNow is making a big bounce. This is important because along with SAP, these are the first big software companies to come out here. I don't know what they've said. I don't know if they've said anything yet. Are they showing any signs, or do they expect to see generative AI monetization? That could be huge for the AI space. What they have to say positively or negatively. URI, I think, beat views, but I don't know if it's trading yet after hours. It's flat right now, but this is doing pretty well. Chipotle, obviously it's been down, but it's having a really strong after-hour session. So that's a sector that could use a boost. IBM, which is slowly trying to turn around. I believe this is technically a handle now after today, so it would be a breakout here. This would be an earnings breakout for what it's worth. So there are some things, and one more, UHS, which is a group here, as I said, of Tenet Healthcare. UHS, that one is moving a little bit positively on earnings. So that hospital space is doing well, and presumably that's going to keep moving up in the ranking. So there's a lot more, and believe me, there's a lot more tonight, a lot more tomorrow morning.
Well, we have reasons to be optimistic because we are looking at some earnings winners, so that's good. And I will say, back to ServiceNow, I mentioned on IBD Live this morning, this is a $150 billion market cap company. So what they say about demand and AI, like you said, is very, very important. So to see this stock up, what is that, up 7% or so in
7%.
Yeah. So that's a good move. We'll see if that helps lift the Nasdaq out of its malaise from today. All right, Ed. Well, thanks very much as always for your insight. That'll do it for today. If you haven't had a chance to check out IBD Live yet, please go to investors.com/IBD Live. You can join us right before the market open. Each day we go for about an hour and a half. I think, Ed, are you hosting tomorrow? I know the schedule's been a little.
I'm hosting on tomorrow, so there should be a little bit to talk about. I just,
Okay.
just getting through the news will probably take us to the top of the hour.
Exactly.
But
A lot of headlines for me this morning. So anyway, we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning on IBD Live. And that'll do it for today. So thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.